6 sleepy.
Yeah, Christmas, midnight. So it's the same deal. You know, normally we have 2 to 3 people on staff. So during the daytime, we usually have 3. During the mids, usually 2, because usually we have an extra person on the daytime because of more phone calls and decision support activities, etc. So you know, a little bit more people then. So you know, they cover the lower 48 with watches, etc. We do our local forecast area. So big difference is we focus on the local area. We obviously collaborate a lot with SPC when it comes to, you know, outlooks, watches. You know, anytime there's a watch that's being issued by the Storm Prediction Center, we are on a phone call with them. Sometimes if it's just our area, that they can just come across that
Sneak through the
break room. So that's kind of the nice advantage there. But you know, if we have another surrounding office, we still have a phone call. So we obviously collaborate with them with also outlooks, etc. So they do the watches, we do the warnings. So the, you know, severe thunderstorm warnings, the tornado warnings, all come from your local forecast office. So, you know, if you ever say the National Weather Service is issued, it's that local office. So, like I said, we have 122 of them. And, you know, besides warnings, you know, that's what probably most of you see from us on a regular basis is our warnings. We obviously still do, you know, the 7-day forecast. So if you've ever been to our websites and see the point and click, we do that twice a day, and we frequently update it if it's necessary. I did that today. So basically we do what we call a gridded forecast out through 7 days, where we have, you know, temperature for every hour, sky cover, etc., probability of precipitation. We do that. We also do fire weather forecasting. That's a big part here in the Southern Plains. We get a lot of fire weather, so we actually collaborate a lot with our Oklahoma Forestry and Texas Forestry quite a bit on fire weather. So, you know, there's a lot of public things that we do, but we do a lot of things with other government agencies as well. So we do a lot of collaboration. Our Sue Todd Lindley does a lot with the Forestry Service, but we also do things with FEMA. Like after a tornado occurs, we may send them a damage path, a preliminary damage path. So, you know, we do a lot of public facing products, but there's a lot that we do to support other government agencies. We also do a lot of aviation forecasting. A lot of our funding actually comes from the FAA, kind of funneled into the Weather Service. Bill probably knows more about the appropriation part of that, but
Significant.
significant. Yeah, it's a significant part. What we do is we call TAFs, which are basically little forecast points for every airport. So we have one for Oklahoma City, Norman, and we actually do it for 8 airports. These are forecasts that go out 24 hours for things that can impact aviation, such as ceilings, visibilities, you know, thunderstorms, any wind shifts, etc. We do these forecasts that go out 24 hours. These are for planning purposes for the aviation community. So, and we do it for a lot of times general aviation, actually. You know, a lot of the big corporations have their own meteorologists, but you know, if you're a private pilot, you can't afford your own meteorologist, hopefully. Maybe you can, but if you need a forecast, though, you can look at that, you know, aviation forecast, the TAF, for that point. And you know, we do it for Oklahoma City, Norman, but we do it for smaller airports too, like up northwest Oklahoma. You know, we have an airport in Woodward. We also do one in Ponca City, Stillwater, Lawton, Wichita Falls. Actually, the Air Force Base down there, they're supposed to write their own TAF, but they said they use our TAF as their first piece of guidance. They came by here and was like, yeah, usually start with your TAF. So, yeah. So, and you know, Lawton, they also have, you know, an Air Force Base in that area as well. So they probably use our TAF too to help for their planning purposes. So, you know, that's a big thing that we do too. So there's a lot of things that the Weather Service does that a lot of people maybe don't realize that happens behind the scenes. And we also are constantly communicating with our partners. Have you ever heard of NWS Chat?
Yes.
Yes. So this is a way that facilitates a two-way communication with our partners in the integrated warning team. So talking about emergency managers, broadcast media, you know, some first responder groups are in there as well. Some ham radio operators are in there, and we're able to basically get reports from them, and we're also able to give them information as well. Sometimes you may even hear it on television, we'll put something in NWS chat, and then our local broadcast partners will actually, repeat it on the air, essentially word for word what we put in NWS chat. So it's a way for us to kind of have a two-way communication with our partners. So, SBC probably doesn't deal with that as much.
We lurk, but we don't type.
Yeah, you don't type. Yeah. So that's another big difference between the national centers and the local offices. We are the ones kind of the boots on the ground that communicate a lot with our local partners. We do a lot of outreach activities with our local partners, such as spotter training. We do that every spring. Well, kind of the winter into early spring. And then we also do integrated warning team workshops where we bring together EMs and broadcast partners, and we essentially try to figure out the best way to communicate among each other and how to best communicate to the public. For example, this last year we had an integrated warning team, and we had Joseph, who's all into Spanish communication. And he actually spoke. I forget what's his last name. Trujillo. Yeah, Trujillo Falcon. He actually came to our IWT and actually spoke about how to best communicate with the Spanish-speaking population. Because, back in 2013, we had the El Reno tornado, and a lot of the fatalities were Spanish population. So there's a lot of Spanish-speaking people here in Oklahoma. So he kind of helped facilitate a discussion with our broadcast and emergency management partners in that IWT. And that was just a small part of that integrated warning team meeting that we had, earlier this year. So that's a big thing that we do at the local offices. We are constantly communicating with our partners. Our warning coordination meteorologist, Rick Smith, he's kind of the liaison between the partners, but all of us on a regular basis are constantly, on our days off, kind of communicating with them on things that are upcoming, that we can kind of work, workshops, etc. Like we do a media workshop at least twice a year. Probably gonna have one this September. It's just to kind of present to the media what the new things that are coming up, and is there any communication or issues that need to be resolved between us and the media. So that's a big part of our job, is outreach and decision support services. For example, we had an emergency management conference down in Durant back in February. It was actually during a tornado outbreak. I think it was like February 26th, that's when we had the tornado outbreak here in central Oklahoma. So Rick and I were down there providing weather support during their conference. And we actually had, it's kind of unique because we had all the emergency managers were actually there because they were at a conference. So when I was providing live radar updates to the Norman EM who was next to me, and I said, you're probably gonna need to sound the siren soon, and he ran off, and we issued a tornado warning a couple minutes later. We appreciate
I heard the sirens too.
Yeah, appreciate. We've heard the sirens quite a bit in Norman this year.
I have,
Yeah, partially my fault.
We'll talk later.
But that's an example that we do a lot, is we do decision support too, and sometimes we are deployed out, at the local office. Our office doesn't do a ton of deployments. Some offices do quite a few.
We were at World Series 2 years in a row in Fort Worth, Super Bowl 45, the NASCAR races.
Yeah, if you're
all those big venues.
I was actually going to ask, because I see that you got a bunch of sports on there, taking high crowds and stuff like that. Is it something that you guys just keep an eye on for certain areas like that, or is it just there for your entertainment?
So we do, the media, that's a good question. That is to actually monitor the local media. How many of you know about the Oklahoma City TV market? It's kind of crazy. It's like reality television.
It's a blood sport. Yes.
Weather drives the TV here. Like it's big. It's like ratings. A lot of money is funneled. The chief meteorologists are highest paid at every TV station. It's what drives the television market here in Oklahoma City. So a big part of what we do, it's actually a great thing because of the big weather coverage that we get here in Oklahoma, is we can monitor the local media, which is awesome. Because they have helicopters, they have storm spotters, etc. out there that can kind of give us a visual confirmation of what's happened. Because of the Earth's curvature, the radar can't really tell us what's happening at ground level unless you have, tornado debris signature, and at that point, well, it's already happening. But, it's great that we have the ability to monitor the local media, because they send out all the helicopters out there. and we're able to essentially monitor, their coverage. So we actually, during severe weather, right now we have 3 people, but during severe weather, every one of those workstations is filled. It's kind of a little different than SBC, because SBC is probably a bit more static.
Yeah,
And-
they hardly ever bring people in.
Yeah, because they kind of have set products. Ours is more, we usually scale up and down, where, while SBC is, a little steady state with a few perturbations here and there.
Right.
We can be up and down, on workload, right? So we easily scale up. We could have 10 to 15 people there on the biggest days. We could have 3 people over there doing warnings. Because we have such a big county warning area, we sectorize warnings. We could have up to 3 people doing.
10 years ago today, that's about what you had.
Yeah.
Although it was pretty localized, maybe.
Yeah.
maybe 1 or 2.
Yeah, I wasn't in office that day, but it was probably pretty busy on that day. But yeah, you could have 3 people doing warnings. You still may have someone having to do hydrology and still the routine products. I remember I mentioned the aviation and the grids, etc. People still need to do those products, so we still have to have designated people doing the routine. And then you also have the people doing the communication. So a lot of times in that inner part of the circle, you'll notice there's some cute computers there. Someone in there might be doing social media, NWS chat. So you may have someone just dedicated to NWS chat. On the biggest days, you may have 2 people doing NWS chat. And then you have social media, and somebody also having to answer the phones as well, because the phones, we actually have a public phone line, which I don't think that's SBC.
We don't, although some folks have found it.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so public phones as well, have to be answered as well, and we have to also do LSRs, local storm reports. Somebody has to be putting those in. So we could have 10 to 12 people here on the biggest days because, there's just a lot of different tasks that need to be done. So we easily scale up. And as you mentioned, the media, we will have sometimes 1 person just dedicated to monitoring the local media, to give us reports to the morning meteorologists. We used to have it kind of plain ops, but then we found out during after action reviews it was a distraction to have all the media playing in the background while trying to do warning operations. So
one other benefit to the TVs, may not have the problem that we occasionally had in Fort Worth, but there are some things that happen in the course of the day that the weather didn't cause, but the weather is pivotal in response. The big one for your office is the Oklahoma City bombing.
Yes.
Plane crashes, train derailments, industrial plant explosions. A lot of times the first we know of it, breaking news on a TV station, it's good to know that because even though the weather didn't cause it, expect that emergency manager to call you within seconds and say, what's the wind forecast? Let's run a trajectory model. Let's get a sense of how the responders need to approach this. So regardless of the hazard, monitoring local media probably is routine at most WFOs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even fire. We
Yeah,
use
oh,
it a lot.
especially that.
We use it a lot to also monitor. That's the first time we sometimes know fires. And like I said, that's the big advantage of this being such a weather-driven market. If there's something weather or fire, they all have, 3 of the stations all have helicopters.
It's covered aggressively.
It's covered. Yes, it is covered aggressively. So, some people say some downsides, which there might be, but the upside is we get really some, a lot of WFOs are paid to have this type of weather coverage that we get to be able to have eyes and ears out there.
Yeah.
So.
I know you have to get back to work.
Yeah.
Any questions
Yeah,
for
questions.
Vivek?
Yeah, with all the 122 stations, how far do the range goes? Because I know they're not the entire United States wise.
So there's we cover most of the landmass and then the surrounding areas, and then I guess some NHC has some of the ocean stuff, right? Some of the oceans are covered
Yeah.
by.
Typical WFO has anywhere between 25 and 40 counties.
We're pretty big here.
Roughly 150 or so miles from the office, but it varies widely. Salt Lake City covers all of Utah, which is well beyond one radar, but.
Albuquerque's huge.
Yeah, and so typically the WFOs cover the marine areas. Farther out, the outer marine waters are covered by the Ocean Prediction Center.
And do they have ways to kind of combine all the coverage and then just make it into one?
Yeah, we consolidate. Like if you're on our websites, you can see that the gridded forecast is all consolidated, and that brings up a point. We also, part of it is having so many offices, continuity of operations as well, because when's the most likely time an office is gonna go down? During storms, right? Severe weather. So
Yeah.
Tulsa is our primary backup office. So actually this year, we've been several times, we've had to put Tulsa on standby, saying, hey, the weather center is in the Polygon, just FYI. So that's another advantage of having so many offices, is like, if we go down, Tulsa can take over, and we've had to take over for Tulsa before, we've had to take over for Fort Worth for secondary, and now we have a third backup, Lubbock, as well. So we have a continuity of operations, which is a big advantage of having 122 offices.
What is do if you like experience like a radar hole, because some is there's holes, radar dead zones, but how you guys deal? How you
Radar
guys-
dead zones?
Yeah, because there's some across the US that some dead zones.
Yeah.
How you guys deal with it?
So, with the, obviously, if you're right above the radar, you have you can't see what's going on right at the radar, but we have surrounding radars. We have TOKC here in Oklahoma City, we have Vance and Fredericks that can supplement if something. And now, obviously, we always use the kind of the whole weather concept, right? Because every location is at some, the radar data is at some height, whether it's southeast Oklahoma or Shawnee, which is to our east, or here, you're always, because of the Earth's curvature, going to be scanning above the storm. So we use our meteorological expertise and knowledge to kind of supplement it, because nothing's ever looked at in a vacuum. You have to use your near storm environment, you have to use good storm morphology and our experience, reports, etc., and consolidate all that information to make a warning decision. It's never one thing. It's not just radar data. You have to also look at environment. You also have to look at reports and visuals, and you can never just look at one thing. So even if it's farther away, you look at other pieces of information to help put together a puzzle.
What if the storm actually hits the radar?
So we use supplemental radars. There's been times where our radar is down during severe weather, and we can use TOKC, which is TDWR here in Oklahoma City. Then we also have Vance and Frederick, and we can use the supplemental radars. There's always another radar that can kind of cover that area, even if one of them is down, because these radars were installed in the late 1980s and early 90s. So occasionally they do go down, but we use other radar, and then we can use our knowledge to kind of fill in the gaps, so to speak.
All right, I think we have to run over to the Radar Innovations Lab, so
Appreciate your
we'll
time
leave you
very
anymore.
much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank